The one thing that I want to just address, and when it comes to estate planning, that I see as one of the biggest challenges is that somebody knows what the plan is, and it's typically the person in the family that makes most of the decisions, and other people really don't know what the plan is, and it can be disastrous. And so I've asked Susan Swinehart for her insight. She's an attorney. She's very knowledgeable when it comes to estate planning. And I've asked her to join us so that we can talk about the importance of allowing your family members to know what's going on so that they don't find out about it after something happens to you, and then they're trying to interpret what you want. Hi, I'm Annette Ba'u, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. Today's free resource is our estate planning checklist. You can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/EPC. The one thing that you need when it comes to your estate plan is to make sure you cover all the different items. And this checklist is going to help you. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/EPC. Making sure that you have an estate plan and that you have all the appropriate documents and that your intentions are met are critical. And this estate planning checklist will just give you really a way in which you can go down and say, yes, done. Ooh, need to do that. Again, you can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/EPC. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/118. Millionaire Series copyrights all materials and intellectual property. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement planning, or healthcare advice. By accessing this content, you agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. So let's dive into the estate planning family meeting. We're going to talk about pros, and then we'll talk about cons, and then I want to talk about some real world examples. Creating a plan is important, but if no one knows or can clearly articulate or really understand what you want to create, it can cause serious problems. Having an estate planning family meeting, ideally every few years, can really ensure that your beneficiaries and trustees understand your wishes and can ensure they become reality. So what I want to start with, Susan, I want to dive into some of the pros and cons so that people can really leave with an understanding of why it's so important. And if they have a situation where maybe they have a family member they don't trust, some of the things they can do that can allow them to achieve their goal without maybe including that person that is not as trustworthy in the plan. And then I want to talk about some real world examples, because I know you as an attorney have a lot. I as a financial advisor have a lot, so we can cover that. And even some things like, how do you approach that conversation? Because sometimes it can be kind of awkward, especially if one partner in the marriage wants to include the kids and the other one doesn't. And who should be at that meeting? Before we dive into the pros and cons, can you just give an overview of your opinion? Why should a family have a meeting? What is the main objective of that?
Well, the main objective is so that everybody knows what is going to be happening when the parent, well, let's assume we're talking about parents passing, what's going to happen so there are no surprises in any way. And everybody knows, because a lot of times there's division among the kids if somebody gets more than somebody else. If you have that discussion about who's getting what and why while the parents are still alive, it gives everybody time to think about it. It gives somebody who may be getting less can come back and say why they should get equal. Somebody who thinks they should get more, like if they have taken care of the parents a lot, and say, that's the way I can be compensated. And there are no surprises, because what happens is that oftentimes the siblings, no more are they even speaking to each other because of what's happened. If the parents are still alive and they have these discussions, then everybody knows what to expect. And it's more likely keep the kids being more friendly toward each other rather than enemies. And it just needs to be said. So you can't go ask a dead person what they really meant.
Yeah.
So if everybody knows when the parents alive what they meant, they get it.
Yeah. And I would just add to that a couple of things. One is sometimes you may not want to share with your kids or grandkids what you're going to do because you don't want them to be mad at you. So that's one thought process. And that's a very valid one if you don't. But I also think what Susan brought up is that if you don't, and now, especially if your estates aren't equal, that can really cause tension. And I have been a part of estate plans where they've disinherited one child, the other one's got it, and it has caused so many problems to where literally the one that got it ended up giving money to the one who didn't because it was just, I mean, they weren't going to have a relationship with anyone in their family. And so all of those things are important considerations. I also think that if you really are not going to be giving an equal amount of money to your kids just randomly, I'm not sure if I would share that personally, but that's something you've got to consider. Now, one of the things, and this is an actual real world situation, is the estate actually purchased a home for the child that's doing most of the care for the parent. Now, all the siblings were in agreement. At the death of that sibling and her partner, that asset will just flow through to the beneficiaries like any other asset. But that was a way in which to compensate this person. And considering the care this person needed, it made complete sense. So sometimes in those meetings, they can be for discussions about what about this, what about that, where everyone feels like they're giving their opinion. Now, obviously, you ultimately get to decide what to do, but including everyone in it, sometimes you'll find that you'll get better ideas and out of the box thinking that you wouldn't get yourself or that maybe even your financial advisor or attorney wouldn't get. So I encourage you to just at least entertain it and go into it kind of with an open mind. Now, I'm going to share my own personal situation. Our game plan was kind of like, we're going to leave half of our assets to our kids and the other half to charity. And oh my gosh, one of my sons was just mortified. You're leaving it to a charity over us? And I just thought he's such a funny person. He's really quick on his feet. He thought about that. I mean, he actually even has started treating us a lot nicer, but he came to me and he said, I just want you to think about this. If you left me all the money, I could probably double or triple that. And then there would be a lot more money to leave to charity than if you leave half of it to charity and half it to us. And it was funny because after having a conversation and seeing how much that bothered him, we really haven't made a final decision on that. And we probably will end up leaving a little less to charity. I mean, my husband's goal and even mine is the fact that we're going to spend it all. But I think a lot of those things can change when you get your kids' opinion and as your kids mature and you see that they really are doing, maybe something to contribute to society or they really are doing their part. I feel very strongly, and Susan, I'm sure you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it, but I feel very strongly that I don't want my kids to be trust funders. Like, I don't want them to think like, oh, she's going to die or me and my husband are going to die and then we get all this money. No, 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 no. You don't get a free ride in this life. You got to work. And when you get ready for retirement, then you're going to get your income supplemented. So do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
No, I agree with that. So many kids, as I see, adult kids are just waiting for their parents to die to get that money. And it's just really, really sad. You can just tell they're just waiting. Or I've seen some cases where they're actually escalate the death so they can get it sooner.
Well,
So
I would just say if you have any of those kids should be disinherited. Now, I do think, and tell me what you think on this. I think if you have a situation like that, then you leave them a little amount of money. I don't think you want to completely disinherit them so they have a lawsuit saying you didn't mean to. You give them $5 or $10 or $20,000. That's it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. But in some instances, the parents are in ill health and they don't realize what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the adult kid gets by with whatever they're trying to do.
Well, and I think, and you've got a very unique situation you're dealing with right now. I do think that one of the things that's really important is you have a trust protector in there. So if things are not seeming right or somebody just ends up dead, I mean, there are cases where somebody ends up dead and you're like, this just seems really weird. And so having somebody there that pursues it is important.
Yes,
Okay,
that's for
let's talk
sure.
about some of the pros. I mean, some of these are obvious, but let's just bring them forefront so everyone can be thinking about, if they're saying, "Oh, I would never do that," and they can hear some of the reasons why they may benefit from it. They may be more inclined to be a little more open.
Well, first of all, you let everybody know in advance individually that you're going to have the family meeting. So you're not sending the message all at once. And then at that point, the child may say to you, have ideas where, you say, we're having a family meeting about our estate. And then they may put in their 2 cents worth, then say something. So then that's already on their mind. So you can prepare better and let them know that this is a friendly meeting. So nobody's coming out like ready to argue about everything. That's really important. And then they just need to have what they intend. And really, what you say is what the input the kids have or what they have to say, how that can influence what the parents are doing, because it gives you another way to look at things when you have the kids saying that. Because I think we're all thinking about our state plans and this is what we think and what we want to do, and say, yeah, but wouldn't it be more advantageous if you did X or did Y and more helpful to everybody and so forth? It's just is a good thing, like two heads are better than one. So kids and parents are better than one, but you just have to make sure it doesn't get contentious. And sometimes you may need to have an attorney to be like the moderator or a financial advisor, but just keep it open and friendly. And that's what you have to do. And then also you can use it as another avenue, like the history of the family or why we've always had this business and what we expect. And I say this is a sliding thing, is that if you want, it gives you an opportunity when your kids know they're going to inherit money. If you say, okay, you can spend a little bit just to take a vacation or whatever, but this is what I really expect you to be a good steward of this money for yourself and for my grandkids or whatever you want to say. It's a good way to put it. Not, well, yeah, actually it is try to make the kids feel a little guilty if they do stupid things with the money.
Well, and like one of the things I think we're going to do is let our kids get together every year and decide where they give money to what charity and be involved in that. And I think especially my son, who it's interesting to see if he really would give money to charity. It's so funny how you have these kids that have the same genetics and have the same upbringing, and they're so different when it comes to maybe where they come from or their head or their heart. One of the things too, I would just add to that is it can create a really strong bond with your family and it can get your kids really aligned, which I think many of us want.
Well, I
And
think this day and age, because everybody's so spread out, the kids are not in the same place usually, but geographically, and they're just like relatives, but they're not really like how they grew up.
oh,
Keep them
absolutely. Yeah,
together.
that's huge. And I think you brought up, engaging the beneficiaries to where they feel a part of it. And I think you had made a comment as far as, if you have somebody that's kind of lazy, let them know that they've got to do some work. We're in very much alignment. We don't want to create trust fund babies. I mean, and the reason being really is that a lot of those people are really miserable. If you haven't worked and haven't built that grit and that self-esteem and that worth barometer, it doesn't matter how much money you get, you're not going to feel fulfilled. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to get money. And along with that money, what I find happens with those people is an addiction comes. And it's typically either overspending, over drinking, over drugging, even any drugs really, but doing something that's in excess and that is not good. And it's an addiction of some type because they're trying to fill that void that they don't, that's not being filled. And money's not going to fill it. You
Yeah.
think it will when you don't have it, but it does not. And so I think all of those things are really good. And I also think what's really important, which you hit on, and I want to really stress, is having the people that are going to get the money know what your vision is, know what your values are, know what your intent is. Some of that you think, oh, well, they know. Not really. And I see a lot of times saying, I don't really know what mom wanted on this or what dad wanted on this. But when you can actually communicate it and they can ask questions, it just makes it so much more powerful. So I love that. So let's now talk about some of the negatives. I'm sure some of the people are going, I can think of some negatives. And I want to just say one thing. If you have any inkling that you've got a beneficiary that could do you harm or that doesn't have the best interest for you or their siblings, I personally would keep them out of the meeting. And I would say, if you want to give them less money, I would say, I don't blame you. Now you got to figure that out. Do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
Well, on the other hand, if you let them in and they know how they are, and everybody else knows how they are, maybe I'll whip them into shape, saying, look, I better mind my P's and Q's and really get into being part of the family again. And I think people often realize that there's a reason they shouldn't get it. I mean, they realize if a parent said that why they're not getting it. People know that. They know that they don't deserve it.
One of the things you could say is you're going to say, we're going to make a decision based on who gets the money, based on how you're showing up in your life, the choices you're making, and you've got to make that decision. But if you have some child that just wants to sit on their butt and do nothing, letting them know that they're not going to be getting the inheritance they think they are may help them to become a little bit more motivated as compared to somebody who's not. I thought it was really interesting that my youngest son, he's getting his degree, chemical engineering degree, is very smart. And he's very concerned about the fact that it's going to probably take him 5 years. I've tried to get him to do like a dual major, and he had moved over to more environmental engineering, which is, I just thought it was a little bit better for the environment, but he's like, that's just too easy. And so he's back in chemical engineering. Well, it's delayed him. And he's so worried about spending an extra year of our money. And I thought that was I'm like, okay, that's the least of my concerns. As long as you're applying yourself and you're doing what you enjoy. The point being is that he is very, very concerned about spending our money. That to me goes a long way, because I think one of the things that I see is the fact that he genuinely is concerned and he genuinely has the goal of it. Now, one of the things he said to me is, he said, sometimes, Mom, I wish that we didn't have so much money, because I think I would probably work a little harder. And I'm like, he already works hard, but I thought that was such an interesting perspective. He goes, like, if I knew I wasn't going to have money, like, when I retire, I would probably be working a lot harder. And I just thought that was such an interesting perspective, whereas my other two kids would never say something like that. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Part of people saying the journey is better than when you finally get there.
Oh, yeah.
You appreciate the journey. And once you are there and you have that success, because, people who are successful, who had an awful time getting to where they are, they said it's all about the journey. He said everything about that I remember and hold on to. And once I get there, it's okay, that's nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things, and just to get back into, like, if you have a beneficiary or benefactor that could harm you, is letting them know that they may not be getting as much money. I always joke around, or I've joked around, and I said, when we were watching some show, so it was appropriate because I don't think any of my kids would kill me. I'm saying, we have provisions in our estate plan. So if we die, any type of weird death, there's going to be a huge investigation. There won't be money for years. And it was like, my son's like, what? I kind of laughed. I thought,
actually, we laugh about that, but that's really, there's some things that be said about that.
Well, there is. And you're going through that right now. Now, is there any other cons that you'd say?
With personalities, you just never know. So somebody can get really bad. But I say in the total, it's probably more of a good thing than a bad thing to have the family meetings and everybody know what's going on. And you can revisit the issue, like you said, every couple of years or whatever, or how annually if a person wants to. But it's just a way to keep everybody together, because sometimes families only get together for holidays because they got to go somewhere else or do something else or work or whatever. And I just think it's a good way to try to keep the family together. The other cons, a lot of times they say bring the spouses in. Sometimes they say do, but I say most time not, because everybody you have.
Oh, yeah.
Every time there's another body in the equation, the more complicated it gets, is my thought.
Well, I agree with that. And what she's talking about is the spouse of your child. And your spouse of your child is generally not going to get any money. So that typically is going to go down your gene line. And so I do agree with that. But I also think one of the things that's important is if you feel at all at risk, you want to let your financial advisor know, you want to let your attorney know, anyone involved know, but you also, I think, like bringing up like forensic files saying, it's so funny now, but the reality of it is if you murder someone, if you think you're going to get away with it, it is so unlikely because the technology alone, it ain't happening. And not only is it not going to, are you not going to get away with it? You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. So it's one of those things where, we're kind of joking about it, but obviously, if you have any concern about your safety, you got to make that a priority. You got to make sure people know. And then you also want to make sure something mysterious happens, it's going to be investigated. And then considering disinheriting. Now, I encourage you to leave a small amount to that beneficiary so that they can't come back and say you unintentionally disinherited them. So somebody says, okay, I see the value of having a meeting. How do you recommend they approach the conversation?
Well, I think talk to each individual prior and say we're having it, and then just start with friendly things. Not that the whole thing should be friendly, but just talk about, just warm it up. Like, oh, what have you been doing lately? Just make it like they're in your home and you're just visiting with them initially, and then you can get to the heavier things. But just make it a general conversation so nobody feels intimidated by the situation that you're going to be talking about, the inheritances.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I would just add to that, the first one thing is really be clear on who should be in that meeting. Establish how you want to explain your goals and values so that it's really clear. Always have an agenda. And I think you should have a written agenda. Look for ways to draw people into the decision and be a part of the solution. And then consider bringing somebody else in the meeting that can help mediate it or help really kind of steer it and or smooth over rough topics. Like if you start getting, you have two kids that don't really get along, you've got somebody that can kind of deal with that. And then if you have questions, you can then ask the attorney or the financial advisor if they're part of it. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's good.
And again, who should be invited? Typically, it's going to be at least the beneficiary, the trustee or executor, and then obviously your financial team. I don't know of any of my clients that have ever had a meeting on their estate plan with their kids that I haven't been a part of, because most of my clients, they know generally what's happening. Now, some of them will include the attorney, sometimes not. I just think it's good. And I think it's helpful because right now I've got a lot going on with different clients, and it's really hard because a lot of these people I've worked with for 3 decades, and it's just every day it's changing. Like I literally got a call yesterday at 7:30 in the morning on one, another one's in 24/7 care. It's just one thing after another. And it's another one just broke her shoulder. It is like, God, it's just every day something. And some of my clients have done a much better job, including their kids, where they know what's going on. Other ones have absolutely no clue. It's just, some people are just so private. They don't really want people to know. So I think, again, that is so important. Like you mentioned, I just want to reiterate that you're really clear on what is the goal with the money. What do you want those kids to do? And really something that reflects the values. If you have a trust protector, they should also be really clear on that.
A lot of children have not had much money during their whole lifetimes in some instances. Then they inherit the money. Then they just blow it because they never had it. And then they're back to square one again, not having much or any money. And that's why saying what you expect and please hold on to this money for your retirement, or don't go out and blow it frivolously. And but some kids just wait on the parents. And it's so sad to see, but so many people do it. I want to tell you about an situation I had like 4 years ago. The mom was very ill. The son quit his job, moved in with her, and then she started going blind, had cancer and all that. And he cooked, he did cleaned, he took care of her so she didn't have to go to the nursing home. He saved her money that she had from her pension, her Social Security money, and everything. And his older brother, who's 2 years older, never did one thing. And he only maybe came around for her birthday. And that was for at least 5 years. She died, and my client kept all that money in a briefcase. But in her trust, it said that the older brother would get it too. So my client brought all the money in the briefcase to the office. I'm like, holy cow. And the brother came, counted out his half, and away he went. And that was that. He didn't think the brother who's basically put his life on hold. He didn't give him any more money or anything. He took his share and wanted to make sure that was all the money there was and left.
That's kind of where, like, I'm not sure what happened to that cat. I'm just kidding.
Well, I know.
Illegal, but it's like, that's an interesting one. But those are the things that are like, that is like somebody like that to me, I don't have any problem with them getting less money because they deserve it. Like they, the one that doesn't do anything to help the parents when they need it, but then is there to get the paycheck. And I think that's something that is just, you just got to be aware.
I know. I was kind of like thinking, he didn't deserve any of that. You'd think he'd say, well, here's 10,000, because the guy quit his job. He could have been earning money for at least those 5 years. He saved, she didn't have to go to the nursing home. She got to stay home. And he was really health conscious about food. So she got the best food. It's just crazy what people do.
Yeah, I love this. I want to just give a couple of takeaways. And then, Susan, I want you to add anything you have. Just a couple considerations as you're getting ready to prepare your meeting is to really get clear on what your priorities are. What is really important that you communicate with your heirs, your trustees, your advisors, so everyone's on the same page. Why is it important for everyone to understand what's going on? Who might assist if somebody's not clear or if there's a conflict or a challenge? And then what are some of the things that need to be done to make sure that everyone's on the same page? And so those are things that you can get input from everyone. It's really important to really get clear on also like who wants what. Some families I've seen where, they will fight tooth and nail. And so we have created plans where it goes down a list and it starts like with, number 3, number 4, and then like, let's say there's 4 kids. So 3, 4, 1, 2, and then 2, 3, it just goes. And so they get to go choose. Other ones, they actually write in who gets what. And then probably the best one I saw is it's like, okay, just go through and get what you want. And it was so funny. They even called me and I got to go through and get what I want. And it was so nice because I'd worked with this client for over 3 decades and I got a little bit of her artwork. I got some of her Christmas decorations. And it was just funny because it was like, I thought that was so nice that they let me come in and get some things. And the family, they got what they wanted. And then after that, they basically gave everything away to a veterans organization. In fact, it gives me goosebumps because it was the best experience I've ever had with people getting rid of things and allowing things. And no one was really attached like, oh, I've got to have her diamond ring or I've got to have that. And it just all worked out. It was just so smooth and so easy. So I love that. And then I think some other things to just be really clear on is, like in some of my cases, people will have 3 or 4 trusts. And so you got to have somebody who can really help with that distribution because it can get complex. And in this particular situation where there were 3 trusts and then ultimately there were 4 more created. So, it's a complicated case. The CPA even made a mistake on the taxes where she was including some income in one trust that should have been another. So you just got to make sure somebody can see your big picture and it can be complicated. And then be really clear on how often you want to have a review, every other year or if something major changes. And then you want to be just really clear on what you're leaving to each child and how are you making it equal? Meaning if you're leaving a business to one, what are you leaving to the other one so that there's not that conflict? I'm going to just add one comment. Warren Buffett believes that no matter how much or how little a person has, meeting with family members can often make them all closer and can really help making sure that your goals and objectives are achieved. And I love that. So do you have anything else to add, Susan?
Yeah, the other thing Warren Buffett says, don't sign any of your estate planning documents until you've had your meeting so that you don't have to sign another set so that you can change it. And actually, I've had somebody take my estate planning documents. I didn't even charge them yet. I just made them pay me before they took them, but I'll get them.
Yeah, well, it's fun. It's interesting, but I think that that's good. And I also think that once you meet with them, you can still do what you want to do. And so you still have that flexibility, but it gives you at least options to where you're not locked into something and you're like, oh, that's a much better idea. I had that conversation with someone who was trying to save money on their estate plan. And I'm just saying, if there's one area I don't recommend that. And this person wasn't even a specialist in estate planning or tax planning. And I'm like, the problem is they're using a boilerplate document and they're not used to what happens on the distribution side. And that is just a disaster waiting to happen. So I really encourage you, make sure you've got a qualified team, that your advisor is qualified in estate planning, your attorney is, not all attorneys are qualified in estate planning, and tax planning. And especially if you have a more complicated estate, that's really important. So on that note, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this. I thought it was really helpful. And Susan, thank you so much for your expertise. It's always awesome. On that note, you guys, make it great. I'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye for now. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.